Welcome back to the Wolf of Property and Casualty. I'm your host, Derek Lasniak, 15 plus years of commercial broking experience in the middle market, upper middle market, and national account space. The Wolf of P&C is a practitioner-led podcast focused on insurance and insurance sales, designed for buyers, brokers, and insurance carriers. Each and every episode, no bullshit, not selling anything here. We're revisiting the series called Commissions to Convictions. Commissions to Convictions is my vulnerable and honest take on the things that I've learned from reaching the absolute pinnacle of success in property and casualty sales and then burning it all down through things like inappropriate relationships, things like substance abuse, things like legal challenges that ended up with me serving 3 months in jail. And my reflections upon all those things before the age of 40 that go into this industry and any sales industry, and an opportunity to just talk about some of the revelations that I've had and the opportunity I've had and the space that I have taken to have them. The title of today's Commissions to Convictions episode is called Confidential but Not Anonymous. And that's a phrase that rang through in my prior professional life. And it's something that I learned about very starkly while I spent time in Rock County Jail. What I learned about Rock County Jail is that, or any jail, I think for this matter, I've only been to one, don't plan on going back to any more. What I learned, and I think I knew this, whether it's your country club, whether it's your employment, whether it's your office, whether it's the office you work in, whether it's a team you work on, is that no matter where you go, and maybe it's because of the times, there is always going to be hearsay. There's always going to be people who enjoy talking about other people. There's always going to be people. I used to say this at my old professional career. There are people that trade in information. There are people that utilize information that they know that they can pass on to another person to make themselves look better. They trade in information. That's a currency for them. I recall a time when I was in jail, and jail is among the most catty places I've ever been to in my entire life. Far worse than high school, far worse than my last employer. The amount of shit talking and backstabbing and things that go on in your unit, which is like your dorm within jail, is kind of unbelievable. And it was one of the things I wrote down as a reminder. I learned very quickly that what's confidential is not anonymous. I've talked about this, that I worked in the kitchen. I ran Meals on Wheels for Rock County for the disabled and the elderly. And you got to remember, when you have a bunch of people that are inmates working in a kitchen, and the kitchen has access to all the good food and food of all varieties, and there's a lot of people who can't afford to get better food or eating the slop that I wouldn't, feed my dog on a day-in-day basis. There's a lot of people running around in this kitchen that are trying to hide and sneak and take food or take more food, because food is like a currency, especially if you're trying to eat well. And I, in my position running Meals on Wheels, I had access to the best food. They feed the inmates slop. They make food for guards and stuff. But the Meals on Wheels food that goes to the elderly, since it's a program funded by the federal government, we have good food. We had fresh fruit. We had fresh vegetables. And I got the benefit of eating that food, but I also prepared that food, and I was responsible for that food. We would get a box of Dole fresh bananas, I don't know, every week or so. And when you have 20 inmates walking around a huge commercial kitchen, there was times when people were walking around, grabbing things off counters, eating it quick. I mean, this was pretty commonplace. And I frankly think that the people running this place kind of budgeted for that. And if you were in the kitchen, you got to pick and choose your moments. But the day that we got bananas, I don't know, I was like a month and a half when I was in there. The day we got these bananas, I knew that we had a huge order for Meals on Wheels the next day, and the bananas were supposed to go out. So sometimes when I count up all the bananas that we got and I know how many people we have to serve tomorrow, I'm saying, look, there's 18 extra bananas. I'm not saying you should take one, but if you take one, no big deal. Other days, like the day that I had going on here, I know that I got about approximately enough bananas to fill all my orders, and there's no extras. I will write on the box, and I won't tell anybody to wink, wink, take a banana. So, of course, what happens, I turn my back for a while, and 10 bananas go missing. And I get pulled into the supervisor's office, and, the next day, where are all the bananas? I don't know. I didn't take them. I said, you guys got cameras all over this place. Why don't you run it back? If I had to guess between you and I think these three people, never listen to me when I tell them about shortages on food. If I had to guess, just between you and I, because I don't want to be a snitch, I don't want to get ridiculed, I don't want to do any of those things. If I had to guess, it'd be those three people. That's just between you and I, but you can run those cameras back. They were the bananas in my station. I was responsible for them. Well, sure as shit, they might have run the cameras back. I don't know if they did. I don't know if they did or not, but it comes out that they fired two people out of the kitchen. That was not unusual. People get fired out of the kitchen all the time. It's unbelievable. But comes out, they get caught for stealing bananas. And they don't say if they looked at the cameras, the supervisors say, you're fired, get out. And I get back to my dormitory and I am instantly the blame. I'm the snitch. I'm the guy that ratted out the banana takers, and I work now for the guards and all those things. And it reminded me that what I said about who might have taken them was confidential, but it certainly was not anonymous. How they figured it out was confidential, whether I pointed them in the right direction, but it was clearly not anonymous that I was the one who pointed the finger. And it didn't lead to me getting beaten up or having to look over my shoulder. But I definitely had people who were bullshitting me and giving me a hard time about it, because my answer to that and my answer to the supervisor, because I wanted to keep my job because I was trying to go home, was confidential but not anonymous. And that term came to my mind instantly. And that's a term that I saw used frequently while I was working in my sales career. Confidential but not anonymous. We used to have meetings and we used to take a lot of surveys. The company that I used to work for was great. I think it was the way as we got bigger of gathering feedback from certain groups on what's going well. How did you feel about the new comp rollout? Or what do you think about, voting for this? Or anything that they possibly could, our employer would constantly be using surveys to gather opinions. And I took a lot of these surveys, both in my sales career, when I was a partner in the firm. I would, be taking these surveys and providing this feedback. And like 5 or 6 or 7 years into it, I finally asked the question, because some of these things would be hot button issues, and some of how you answered some of these surveys. If you were to say something negative about the organization, you want to do so because you believe that the person is going to use that information to be better. Hey, I think the comp split is bullshit. I think going from 30 to 25% of commission sucks, and I don't really see where that 5% is going to the value to the customer. I hate it. You say those things if you believe that it's going to a place where it's going to be taken objectively and into consideration when new decisions are made. You say those things because you believe that you're going to be either putting it out there in a confidential and potentially anonymous way. If it was going to be sitting in front of the leadership team that you're talking to, you would hope that they would take all of the comments back about, here's what we think about the new PTO strategy, and no names would be attached to it, because the truly objective are not going to want to know who said what. And I was surprised one time when I asked the question about, hey, is this survey? They don't know what I'm saying. They don't know who I am unless they can pick up on the tone. No. This survey is confidential, meaning we hold this in confidentiality, but it's not anonymous. And that changed the way that I thought about how I answered things. It made me less open, but it made me more guarded in some ways, and maybe not guarded enough in other ways. But you have to remember that in whatever culture you've created within the organization you work for, it's probably better to just think about what you're saying as confidential, but not anonymous. It doesn't mean that you have to walk around not trusting anybody. It doesn't mean that, you can't speak your mind. And if you have a great idea, you should bring it up. But before you say something, or before you write something, or before you share it with your friend that promises Scout's honor, if you thought about it through the lens of it's confidential, but not anonymous, would you still be okay with saying it? If it sat in front of the CEO of the company with your name attached to it, would you still be as vindicated saying that you disagree with that, or I'm not voting for that? And so remember, not everything that is confidential is anonymous, no matter who you're talking to, whether it's bananas in jail or whether it's, a survey you're filling out. Just understand that it might be confidential, but it's not necessarily anonymous.